I'm Paul Aston, and I'm a teacher at Manzanita. I'm also the head of school and the founder of the school. And together with a lot of people, including in particular Jenny Griffiths, my wife, and a co-administrator and teacher there as well, and quite a few other people here that are Manzanita staff. So if you could raise your hand, Manzanita staff, that would be great. Yeah, look around. If you're a Manzanita student, would you raise your hand? That would be awesome. How about... If you're a Manzanita parent, how about that? Okay. And then I'm trying to think, Kamakshi, like otherwise affiliated in a multiple, yes, family, extended family. Okay. Friends and family. This is my little brother right over here. How are you, Campbell? Hi, Luca. Nice to see you guys. So a couple things I want to say. I had the chance to I had a chance to have fun with a group of parents. A few weeks ago, we were reading an article by Frederick Bender, who's a human ecologist. He's at a university in Canada, and he had written an article called On the Importance of Paul Shepard's Post-Historic Primitivism. Pretty cumbersome title, but Paul Shepard's name is in there, and he's a very renowned thinker in the world of human ecology, and I was thinking a lot about him as I was reflecting on the talk this evening. Something came up in that article that I was reading, and I wanted to read it to you, share with you what was in the article, and that I felt really bore on the experience that we're going to probably have tonight as this conversation unfolds. One of the things that Frederick Bender, the author, quoted Paul Shepard, it was actually a paraphrase, he says, "Shepard adds that a culture's quality is measured by how well it eases the major life transitions embedded in the human genome. These include mother-child bonding, separation from the mother, formation of primary social ties in early childhood, formation of our existential attitude, that is, whether we experience the world as caring, nourishing, instructing, protecting, or vindictive, mechanical, and so on. Passage through puberty and entry into adulthood, marriage, childbearing, child-rearing, old age, and death. How and how well a person traverses these stages varies from one culture and individual to the next. Shepard argues that hunter-gatherer cultures suit human ontogeny best because natural selection shaped the human genome to hunting and gathering over a period of 2 million years. Historic cultures, like ours, within the context of history, written history, hardly can improve on the basic cultural style found among hunter-gatherers. When historic cultures failed to provide appropriate tutoring, testing, and ceremony for human development, a slide into adult infantility occurs. In Shepard's view, the egoism, consumerism, and human chauvinism prevalent in the culture of extinction, our drastically shortened acosmic sense of time, and our culture's rationales for refusing to live in harmony with nature are all symptoms of such arrested development. I would add to this list the culture of extinction's denial of death. And I wanted to share that our community encountered death this year in a pretty vivid ways. Many of us affected directly, personally, family members of many of us. This year was their year of transition. And so we had this amazing opportunity to respond to that in a way that might give some greater attention and time to the process of grief. And we did that through a ritual fire that we lit that would burn for a full 4 days, 96 hours through the day and through the night, carefully tended, and a space that was very carefully created for that with many understandings and protocols related to that space, how you enter it, how you leave it, how the fire is tended and by whom, and how people are greeted when they arrive, and there's a whole lot of things that came into that, and that was all gifted to us by a colleague and friend and mentor of our communities, John Young, who had been given that ritual and tradition by some indigenous people that he had worked with from the East Coast, from the Adawa. And so we brought that ritual in our own kind of quick way early in the year, and that was to attend to the loss of a parent in our community. And then we actually had a couple more losses, including my own mother and our assistant head of school's mother, and then many other family members here, grandparents and parents of others in our community. Another parent here lost his mother, and another student lost his grandfather, and it kind of kept going. So we ended up having 3 of these sacred fires, is what they're called. And it was an amazing experience to take a different approach to loss that actually cultivated a timeless experience, allowed for, it was the only time in my 3.5 years of being at Manzanita where I actually didn't feel like I had any other responsibility. When I stepped into Sacred Fire, I let everything else go, and I would spend hours there, and I didn't worry about unanswered emails and things like that. And I would say that's partly how the space was held. It was also something very archetypal and ancient about that quality and kind of approach to grief. So that was something we got to experience in our community, and I felt a lot of gratitude for that and continue to, and it really heightened the level of our collective sense of being in this together as a school, as a family, as a community. So for me, clearly the loss experience, the grief ritual became very vivid and very alive and very necessary, and I will never probably be able to approach grief without tending to it in some way commensurate with that experience, even if I can't light a fire for 4 days. But so that's one transition. We have others coming. We have Ryan about to have a baby. How many more days, Mr. Ryan?
4 days.
4 days to be a new daddy. So, that's the other end of that cycle that we know so well, right? So welcoming that as well. So I'm just so grateful that Lauren Dalberth, who was here last year, and Dave Hage, her colleague and co-founder of Weaving Earth, and also her husband, and also a tremendous mentor for our community. I'm just really grateful that they made this trip down to Southern California and Topanga from Sebastopol, which, if you don't know, is north of San Francisco. California actually goes beyond San Francisco. A lot of people don't know that. It's quite a ways, actually. It's actually a really big state, I used to think Southern California was San Diego, and it's like, no, actually, that's us. So I'm really, really happy that they came down, and they're here to really share with us some of their experiences and perspectives. And I also want to point out that they are some of the most articulate spokespersons for much of what we at Manzanita envision to be a really powerful way forward for community and for humanity and for schooling and for children and for adults. They're really strong advocates for deep nature connection practices and cultural and community regeneration, and I know they'll bring a lot of wonderful stuff for us to think about. So I'm really, really grateful that Dave Hage and Lauren Dalberth are here today. So welcome.
Thanks, Paul. I hope I don't fall off the stool. No, I'm so happy for the stool. I get to plant my feet. Thank you, Paul, for the introduction, and also for all that Manzanita is doing. You all have such a ripple. We got invited to come here and share stories about what we're doing in our community up in Sonoma County, and we often are sharing stories of what you all are doing down here up there. So we also are here to hear some stories and glean some stories and weave them together. So, and I'm really happy to have a representative from Slohanna, affectionately called Roberto. And my name's Lauren, as was said, and this is my husband Dave. And my Hebrew name is Liba, which means heart. And so I wear this heart around my neck in celebration of all matters of the heart, and that's really what I feel that I'm here to do, is to celebrate and tend to the matters of the heart. And that's really been true for me since I was little. I guess my parents knew that. They must have heard that as I entered the world. And I'm named after my grandma Lillian, so I just want to thank her as well. And then about 4 years ago, I married this wonderful person, and 5. Really?
It's closer to 5. It's about.
That's true. Okay, 5 wonderful years ago, I married this wonderful person. And my last name changed to Hage, or Hage, which is Norwegian, which means garden or to garden. And so I feel that in that transition, my name changed to garden the heart. And that's really been true for me also in the last 5 years as we've stepped deeper into the work that we're doing at Weaving Earth. which is the organization that we co-founded along with our third partner named Will Scott, who we just dropped off in the canyon south of us, right? That's south, Temescal. Am I saying it right? South, okay. And he's in an event called Youth Passageways, actually engaged in similar conversations. So thank you to him as well. And thank you for the warm welcome. There was fresh flowers, chocolate, and toothbrushes waiting for us when we arrived. So thank you.
And clean sheets,
Yes.
food in the fridge. I never felt so welcomed.
Oh, and a really nice sign.
Yeah, I'm taking notes. So my name's Dave, or David, Nicholas Hage, and our Hage is the Norwegian roots. So my roots go back to Norway, and Nicholas is English. It's a last name, Nickles, N-I-C-K, Nicholas. So like, I have no Nick. I'm Nicholas. So Ireland, England, Norway, and Germany are my roots, and I've been spending most of my life in Northern California. Grew up in Northern California, born in San Francisco, and spent a couple years at UCLA, where I got to get to know this place a little bit, but I never made it to Topanga, so it's quite nice to be here now. And yeah, I just feel I've been curious about what you all are doing, and I know that we've had some influence. We've gotten to work with people here, and it's been so amazing to see, in the work that we do, we share a lot of ideas and some framework, but not a lot of how do you actually do this, and because it requires us to creatively respond to our community's needs. And it's been so wonderful to watch how a group of people has taken it on and run with it in so many ways. So I'm here for the next few days to be with Manzanita to learn is really my intention for coming. So send greetings from the North Country, the far, far north, all the way north of San Francisco, where it's quite lovely. Beautiful place, and we stopped over in Los Padres Wilderness to get some wildflower fix. It's going off right now, and we come with the wilderness at our back to be with you here tonight. It's good to be here.
There's an air conditioner, so you might want to talk a little bit louder.
Okay.
Great. Well, honoring transitions is the theme. It felt appropriate after receiving some of the stories that of what your year here has been, which really is just probably true every year, but just the way that you all held it this year, I think is really strong. And gosh, you said it. Last time we saw you, we sang you off to get married. Is that true? Mm-hmm. And now you're about to have a baby. So lots moving in the community, and what I love so much about Manzanita is that it's more than just a school. The vision is so much about building healthy relationship, and I remember speaking about this last year when I was here in February, that for that to really happen, there's going to be a need to tend to the grief of the community and tend to the joy of the community and tend to the different transitions and relationships in a good way. And, how will you do that? And how the community responds says a lot about the health of the community. So as far as I can tell from the ripple that I feel from you all, there is good health in this community. And I also really appreciate the willingness to keep asking, how do we be healthier? What's needed? What are our blind spots? And so thank you for that. Yeah. And let's see. Do you want to say a little bit about Weaving Earth before we, just so where we're coming from, before we go in?
Sure. Me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to go back just a little bit farther to when I was in high school. which was, believe it or not, a long time ago. I turned 40 years old this year, and which is a transition that needed to be honored. I just want to acknowledge that. And it was well honored. We can talk about that some, what did that actually look like. It's quite a powerful experience for me to turn 40. In my high school years, I was the kid that was constantly writing papers or giving speeches any chance I got that was about the state of the environment. I was very concerned as a young person and quite upset, really kind of pounding my fist and stomping my foot. And so that carried me through into my adulthood, where I looked around trying to find the right kind of work that would satisfy my need to do something different, my vision for a different reality, which led me to the Peace Corps. Turned out that wasn't quite it. We can talk about that if you want. It was an amazing experience, and it got me to where I am now, which was due to the fact that I was studying and helping teach about sustainable agriculture. And that opened my eyes to just the state of affairs in a way that I hadn't been, that I hadn't realized up until that point, really, of just the scope that we were working with. Sitting on the edge of Brazil, watching old-growth forests drive by in trucks every day will do that to you. And I was very discouraged and came home and luckily had read a Tom Brown book, which blew my mind and kind of freaked me out at the same time. And Tom Brown wrote The Tracker, and it's a good one to read if you haven't yet. Interesting story. And he had heavily influenced one of our mentors, and that's John Young. So I looked up John Young and found out that he had many programs and classes and even a school up in Washington State, and started looking into it to find that he had just actually moved to the Bay Area. And so I found a class of his called Institute of Nature Awareness, and I signed up for that. When I showed up at the gates on the day one of the Institute of Nature Awareness, it had changed its name to the Regenerative Design and Nature Awareness Program, which was the combination of the work of permaculture and looking at how we design human settlements in a way that's in harmony with the natural ecosystems, and the work of deep nature connection. What are the tools, practices, ways that we can practice or that we can connect to ourselves, to others, and to the natural world? And that was a launching point for me of finding something that was stretching me in ways that I had never experienced before. And I thought that I signed up because I wanted to be a good tracker. I wanted to know how to track animals and know which plants were medicinal and edible, and how to make a trap and catch things, and be able to take care of myself in the wilderness, basically. And what I got was something very much unexpected and much deeper than that. And I got that and much more. For 8 years, I studied and worked for that program. Lauren and I came back that's where we met, by the way. RDNA is responsible for this union. Did you get that? Okay. And thank God. And came back as apprentices, and then came back on staff. And that's also where we met our partner, Will. And so that work there, along with our personal backgrounds, came together to 3 years ago now launch, in partnership with Will, the Weaving Earth Center for Relational Education. And there we have a host of programs for youth and adults. The flagship program is the Immersion, which is a 9-month program for adults and kids. And that's what gets a lot of our time. But we also have a wonderful group of staff and co-run other programs ranging from day-longs to week-longs to year-longs, weekend series, all around the question of what are the tools, practices, good ideas, things to do that help us connect to ourselves, to others, and to nature. How's that?
That was good. Thank you.
Yeah. You wanna add anything?
Well, I would just say that, out of connection, or connection really strengthens relationship. And as we were looking at the state of affairs and the climate of our political system and our social systems and environmental systems, what we came to was in these times, what's needed is the strengthening of relationship, because that's the place where it breaks down oftentimes. The human piece of the puzzle, with the play on words intentionally, is so important, and that's oftentimes where it breaks down. How do I relate to myself, to those around me, and to the earth, and all these other systems that are, governing how I move through the world, really? That there's truth in that, in a healthy way. So relationship is so important and essential, really, to the healthy fabric of the community. And so we spend a lot of time working on connection practices, deep nature connection practices, as we call them. And a lot of that is based on the seasonal cycles or the time of day. And I know that that is embedded into how Manzanita is run as well. I mean, and right now is such a sweet time. I love that you said we bring the wilderness in our backs, and we were just in these fields of lupins. Oh my gosh, where the smell is just so strong. And everyone that we passed out in the wilderness just had the same face as they were looking at the flowers, just like, like just that East birth time. This springtime just elicits such a interesting energy. And it's a wild, kind of unwieldy energy, too. Any teachers relate to that? How about the kiddos in the room? You relate to that? Anyone else relate to that? I definitely do. And so how do we model our lives on the transitions that are occurring in natural cycles, both in the time of day, seasonally, and then how does that then reflect what's happening for me personally as I move from, young baby to early childhood to the adolescent puberty phase to young adult to on and on and on and on around the wheel. And in the places that I've experienced in myself and witnessed where that's being honored well, the health of the community is that much stronger. And I hear those questions being asked here at Manzanita, which makes sense, because as community is created, that will be essential. And it's just real that there will be a new baby here in a few days. And what do? How do we mark that well? How do we make sure that that baby knows it's welcomed? Really, truly welcomed, so that from the moment of, the birth, and not just welcomed by the parents, but welcomed by the community. And what is it to be an auntie or an uncle or another member of the community and witness a child from birth all the way growing up? And I'm sure many of you can relate to this feeling of being able to see the essence in people, and especially the little ones, and then watching that grow and blossom like the flowers are blooming right now. And that's happening for us yearly on an annual cycle and daily even, and then in the greater arc of our lifetime. So we've been really dedicated to honoring these different transitions in our community, and it's having a profound effect. And I just want to pull back and say that also the seemingly little transitions, which I shouldn't even put a qualifier on it, because a transition is relative to the person's experience and how it then affects the community, right? But starting a new job or losing a job or a new relationship forming, how is it to as a new relationship is forming, stand there and say, hey, we're exploring a change in our relationship. And let us be witnessed in that. And then, if that's in place from the beginning, then it's so much easier as we have little bumps along the road or celebrations along the road for the community to be drawn in and woven in and a part of. And then what it is to say, oh, actually our relationship is changing again and we're separating ways. So much energy oftentimes is given to the weddings, but then not the separations and the transitions. And that has a huge ripple on the community and the family structure and the kids. And I remember what that was like when I was a kid and my parents divorced. And I needed someone to say, this is a big transition that you're going through. And how is that for you? And just to mark it. So anyway, many things can be marked, and it's important. That's the headline of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I love that the baby is coming here. It's been quite a year from the stories that I've heard here in this community. Like, wow, really strong story. And 2 years ago, my sister had a baby. 2 years, April 4th. That's the first, and it was the first child born into my immediate family. And what a powerful thing that is to see that happen. I had never been so close to it in my life. And you know, they know us. My sister and her wife know who we are, and they asked us some questions about what we might do. And we were like, well, I don't know. We've never done this before. We've got some ideas. Let's try this. You know, very simple. We just were in the hospital room and sang to her, and then made some blessings of like, here's what we hope for you, and here's what to watch out for. You know, life's crazy, but wonderful. You know, like really good. And you know, I don't know what her experience of that was. I don't have any idea, really. She was asleep, I think. But that's something that we can tell her for the rest of her life. We can say, this is what we did on your birthday, and these are the songs we sung, and these were the prayers we made for you, and here's the gifts we gave you that you still have with you. You know, and what I'm imagining what that might be like for her at 27 years old. Will she ever doubt that she belongs? You know, that seems to be one that is up for people. It's one we run into a lot. Do I belong here? And I don't think that alone will do it, but I think it's a powerful thing to do in direct response to that issue. So we actually had someone call just recently. We have a child who was just born in our community prematurely by a good amount of time, actually. And so we weren't quite ready, I guess. But luckily, a young man who's in our program called me up and said, this happened, we have to do a welcoming ceremony. And even I was like, whoa, yeah, we have to do that. Like, what do we do? And so in a way, you know, our community is similar in that we're figuring it out too, and trying things on and seeing how it goes. And it's been such a joyful ride to see the things take root, and now things that we've done, especially around death, because that's one that tends to have a significant impact on a community. The things that we've put into place and tried over the years now are happening without us, which feels significant. You know, it's like there's competence in the community for things to happen because it's what you do, because we saw it and it worked and it felt good. And now here's this new one with the babies coming, we're not going to be there because we're here. And so talked about it, gave some ideas, and now it's going to happen while we're gone, and we'll get to hear the story. I just love that. And maybe we'll be here.
That's right.
No pressure, right?
Yeah. I'm curious, since there were 3 fires for the deaths in the community here, for some story or reflection back on how that affected you, how was that for you, and any questions that there might be in there.
I would add to, just for someone who may not know, is that the fires were tended largely by the high school students, the 9th and 10th graders. There's 4 boys and girls, 4 men and women in that class, and they were very much holding that sacred fire with help from adults. So just wanted to and they called those fires in as well. They asked for them.
And for the sake of the audio, I'm going to run the mic to anybody that wants to ask a question or share a story. Is it you?
Hi. One thing I noticed with the kids was that, they really stepped up. We were trying to hold a space for that fire in the lighting of it and in the nurturing of that fire for that 4-day time period. And the, I don't know, if seriousness isn't really the right word, but the reverence and the focus and the different ways that the different children showed up in that ceremony, I thought it was profound. I thought it was cool.
Thanks. Can you pass that down?
My mother passed last year, and she was honored in the second Sacred Fire. And it was interesting for me to kind of compare the rituals of passage, because there was the whole funeral and that process in the Catholic world where she lived in St. Louis, which it's a really specific kind of I'm going to call it a performance for the community that has some importance, but I felt it really is. It was so much work for the family to do that kind of performance of the funeral, versus the space that was allowed in this grieving, in this circle, where you really could be with that place. And so that was an unusual opportunity that I think we don't, that has been lost, that kind of got recaptured in this sequence of sacred fires.
My grandmother died when I was about 11, and I remember going to the crematorium and watching this, what I considered at 11 to be a hollow ritual, and and the curtains, these red curtains opened, and there was a fire, and the casket went into the fire, and it was like I was in shock, and there was no holding at all for me. And the priest talked about her, but he'd never met her. And it was as an 11-year-old, I was just shocked at the culture that I was being born into, and the way it had no response to me. And then 3 years ago, my mother died in England, and I managed to fly back, get to her in hospital, and spend a day and a half with her before she passed. And she kind of passed in me and my sister's arms, and it was beautiful. It was clearly a birth. There was no doubt about it. And nobody told me that you could experience death in such a beautiful way as a birth. And that was a profound experience. And then to come back and witness this fire. We came back from Berkeley, and we came back to the school. And it was the most profound thing I've ever seen a school do in response to anything. And in response that this fire was asked for by the 14 and 15-year-olds. That that in itself was amazing, and that the school could respond, and that they seemed to create an initiation for themselves, as well as for the bereavement and for those who'd lost. It was an initiation, a coming of age, and you could see it in them. You could see how they glowed afterwards, how they stepped forward into a new space, and it was utterly profound.
My sense among so many things is that the sacred fire accelerated the depth of the soul of the community, that there was an igniting of the soul and moving it into a level of spiritual community that connected everyone through this profound river of honoring, back into the past, into the present, and forward into the future. That I think is, I think everyone was really actively involved, was so moved to witness, and the level of true tribe, where I felt like even the ages, everyone's ages dissolved, in a way. Like there was youngers and elders, but there was also this just beingness of souls together. I have a question in that I also sensed the question kind of arising through over the course of the three fires. As I spend a lot of time sitting with people who are grappling with in private practice, grappling with the unresolved grief, through their lives and the havoc that it wreaks in the present time. And so the combination of that, like what else that maybe you all do in your community that draws forward the grieving process, but and then connecting with what you shared, Dave, when I was hearing in your story about being in Brazil and watching the trucks go by with the old growth forest, that grieving for all that's going on the planet. And I find even, as long as I've been around and aware of these things, I've been having these just periods of overwhelm of just, the volume, just the information that comes in, the rhinos being destroyed, the elephants being destroyed, all these things that we all know. And I'm just curious what you're doing in your community that to work with some of those levels of grief.
When I was a little kid, like little, there was like a new cousin, and we went to go visit him, and I don't know, I just remember thinking it was so weird, like he couldn't sit up by himself, and he was like wobbling around, and I don't know, I spend most of the time like looking at him, probably like weirdly, I don't know. But I don't know, one day I was just sitting there like watching him drool all over himself when I just realized like one day I'm going to be able to tell him, hey, I remember before you were born. And that just felt really weird to me. Like I've never been able to tell that to anybody before. But and then I realized that so many people have been able to tell that to me. And I don't know, it was just like, it's just weird. It's like, okay, he didn't exist, and now he does exist, so what are we going to do with him? I don't know. It's just a freaking baby, man. I don't know.
I love that. What's your name?
Hetty.
Hetty? Yeah. I love what you just said, something that is so important. I'm really glad that you said that when you realized that you could see the cousin, you could say to the cousin, I knew you before you were born, and then the realization, wow, there's other people that can do that for me. But that's part of what weaves the fabric of the community together, because that you just said that so clearly, that is true for so many people and oftentimes can go unrecognized. But if I can, honor and acknowledge someone in my family or community, all of a sudden I realize how many aunties and uncles and support people that I had growing up. And it just tightens those relations. And I have had so many moments of then going home and talking to my mom's friends and just being like, thank you for what you did. Like, I remember a conversation we had when I was little and just tugging on it and then reconnecting in a potent way, and then what that's done to our relationship, and also how it's now allowed my mom to talk about the death of her mother in a way that we weren't able to do before. It had to be with the stronger fabric of relation with me and my auntie, and the auntie with my mom and I, and beyond. So thank you for saying that so clearly. Yeah. Maybe we'll do one more and then respond to the grief question.
We were totally new to the community when the first Sacred Fire happened. We moved here, I think, in June, and I think it was September, October. And I just remember thinking, wow, like, we have landed in the right place. Like, this is just so incredible. And like so many people have said, watching these older kids showing up and taking pride in their jobs or their duties and or whatever, they're tending to the fire and just being there and showing up night after night or for the entire day and setting such a good example for our kids who are younger. We just were so psyched to be here. And then also honoring the dead and talking about it and bringing the community together. We had a tragedy in my family before I was born. Lost an aunt and uncle, and my parents took in their kids, and it just was never talked about. And I think it was so painful that it just sort of was like, it died on Saturday and Monday was the service, and it was like, okay, let's move on. And still people 40 years later, 45 years later, still struggle with the feelings that were never expressed. So to feel that love and support and community and to really honor the people that have passed is so special. And so I felt like it was really cool to be here and be part of the community, and especially to see it go on and to see the kids asking and demanding for that to happen each time someone dies. So, and as you get older, I mean, like when you just said, it just reminds me of being young. You don't know anybody really that's died. And then as you get older, it becomes more of a part of your life and a natural part of life, and you accept it more. But there's certainly more tragedies and disease and people dying at younger ages than previously. So I think dealing with it as a community is a much more healthy and just a nice way to deal with it. So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. I mean, you touch on something that I imagine many people in this room have felt, and also we've experienced and heard so many stories from others, that oftentimes something happens and the pain is too much as a possibility for why this might happen, and then it's not talked about. One thing we're working a lot with right now in our community is, what is it to really be in social transparency, and I gave some examples earlier, but hey, I'm in this new relationship and have it witnessed, or hey, this is happening and have it witnessed, or hey, gosh, this is happening, or I did that and I think I hurt someone's feelings, and to have that witnessed and not allow the shame to build up so much that it might create the story that I'm not loved or I don't belong, which in all the people we work with are the most prevalent things that we hear over and over and over again. I'm afraid to be my full self because I'm afraid I won't be loved. I'm afraid to let my gift shine because I'm afraid I won't be loved. I'm afraid to mess up because I'm afraid that I won't be loved. And I don't know if I belong then. And then what? And that feels like the end of the world. And I see a lot of head nods in the crowd. But gosh, we hear that story with so many different faces on it. So yeah, thanks for bringing that into the room. And what we've witnessed in our community is it's not too late to tend to the impact or the pain or the emotion or the joy, the unrecognized joys as well that may have happened in the past that went unrecognized. And as it goes unrecognized and then another one goes unrecognized, it just stacks on top of itself. And then a story can build, oh, you know, my moments of joy aren't worthy or aren't, you fill in the blank. I don't know what the story that gets created, so many different ones. But we have seen with such great success that just acknowledging a moment of connection, wow, you saw that bobcat and it looked you in the eye, and what were you thinking about in that moment? And just really working with someone just has such a ripple effect back through time. It's a timeless moment. Connection is timeless. It's the language of the universe. So it puts us back into the language of the universe. And it has this beautiful power to, this sound is also quail flushing, but it's also just moments of release happening back in time. It touches on all the other ones. And they can come to the surface. And maybe they don't all release with that one, wow, that's really beautiful that you looked the bobcat in the eye. Or, wow, I hear that was really hard for you that moment went unacknowledged. Or, wow, I hear the pain in hearing that the elephants are going extinct, or, you know, whatever your story is. Maybe it doesn't fully release all of those, but it does bring them a little bit closer to the surface and allow for the possibility for them to be released in a healthier way. And what a responsibility we have to the younger generations to catch those moments in real time so that they don't stack up on themselves. Or if they do, at least it wasn't too long before they were caught. You know, that is essential. What will the next generation look if we do that well? And what is it to do that if all of mine haven't been caught? What is it to do that if I have my own pain points in there? Or, wow, that baby's being welcomed. Was I welcomed? Wow, that young one's going through adolescent rights. Did I have that? And then what stirs? And that is a whole ride. That's why we started working with adults. And we need both. Sometimes I'm nervous to even tell the story that's why we started working with adults, because it can paint the picture that we only need to work with adults. And we need to work with all ages, all generations. So I look forward to seeing what that ripple will be. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but maybe I'll come back as a bird to get to see it. Do you want to add anything to that? And then the grief question.
Yeah. Well, just in terms of the question of belonging, since that is in the room right now, the practices of nature connection, the core routines that you all are putting into play here, and many, many others, all the tools that help us connect to the place, specifically to place, they address the question of belonging effortlessly. And because once we start to get to know the system and we see that we have an effect on it and it has an effect on us, and we know that in our bodies, visceral understanding that I affect this thing, and I can do it in a good way, which is where permaculture has really come in handy, that I can actually have a positive ripple on an ecosystem, and a really, really positive one, like a really beautiful ripple on this place. I can do that. And we can do that as a community. Suddenly it's like, no, there's no question we belong here. And in terms of the question of grief, the answer to that is really broad. And what I would say is diversify. Find as many grief tending tools as you can and try them on, whatever that looks like to you. And from the simple to like in the moment to like breathing is one of my favorites. Remembering to actually breathe. That goes a long way, it turns out, especially like right here.
Especially the exhale, because oftentimes something happens that may trigger a grief point of any emotion, and the inhale happens, and then a swallow rather than the exhale back out. And then all of a sudden it can stick in our bodies and lead to all sorts of health troubles down the line. So one of our participants this year said, when in doubt, breathe out. So he says, start with the out breath, and then it allows you to breathe in, So that one is often overlooked, but just breath. Or if I notice someone, oftentimes if there's an in-breath, the shoulders go up. And if there hasn't been an exhale, that's a big sign. And sometimes that's subtle. But to just say, are you breathing? Saban Fusame, one of our very dear friends and teachers, she'll just say, if something's happening in the field, just community breathing, are you all breathing? And that one's been profound.
Yeah, and so that's kind of her work is a little bit more on the other end of the spectrum, like really complex tools for moving grief energy that gets stuck in our bodies. And she's, that's just one. And we work with the same man who brought us the Sacred Fire, Uncle Paul Rayfield, brings a grieving ceremony to us now every year. And that's been really beautiful, quite powerful thing to do with community. So from the simple, like exercise goes a long way, remembering to go outside, get away from my computer for a while, to the complex things that require a community to know how to hold them, like a sacred fire, like a grieving ritual.
I wanted to say, though, one thing we started to notice in our community, because we would bring Saban Fusame out and to be with us each year. She is a wonderful woman. If you want to look her up online, Saban Fusame. She's also written some really beautiful books. And she's from Burkina Faso in Africa, very dear person. And so every year we were doing this grief ritual, and then what we started to notice was that people were storing their grief for the year because they knew we were going to do it. And we were just like, this is not going to work, people. And because then it's, what good is that doing? I mean, it's doing good things, but it's another to acknowledge the emotion that's there in each moment, and that goes so far. And we just had this conversation today. It is not always easy to realize what emotion is going on inside. And so how do I do that well? And we need other people oftentimes to mirror back for us. The lupins mirror back for us state of mind, and the birds are really good teachers at mirroring back the state of mind. This is why we love bird language so much, because it just shows that as one bird moves, the rest of the other birds move as well, and there's just this constant dance happening. That's a whole nother story, right? You were at bird language this year. Honeycomb landscape. And
Ask Benjamin about the honeycomb landscape.
That's right. But not all at once, because that will be too intense. We need each other to reflect back and to mirror what we're seeing. Yeah, these are the gifts I see in you, or this is the question I have heard you asking every day for the past few months. Or, wow, you just asked that question really differently today than you did yesterday. That's interesting. What moved for you? What shifted? And just those little moments of recognition and honoring that that's a transition, different relationship to a pattern that I have, that if that is recognized, that goes such a long way, because it allows it to integrate into the body, literally settle into the body and become part of us in a different way. Because if that goes unmissed, I may not even know that I did that. And then the learning may just be lost on me. We see that one a lot too.
I like to think that I'm a very unique snowflake on Earth, But it turns out like everything that I'm dealing with, everybody else has also dealt with in some form. Like somebody's already been through this. So we're really engaging and really making a conscious effort as a community to practice social transparency. So when there's things that are challenging, to remember to reach out and say, this is hard and I need some help here. And calling a circle to hear what's actually going on, which is like, from the way I was raised, is a radical shift from the way it was done. You know, it's very much more like, you don't get to see that. In fact, it doesn't exist, you know. So it's been a really beautiful and powerful thing to do with a group of people, to come together and find out that we're all working through the same stuff. And it goes faster when we do it together. Not easy, and not simple, actually, either. we like to say that peacemaking is simple, not easy. It turns out that social transparency is not simple or easy, but it's been really powerful and beautiful. And when the time comes for a community need, the work that we've done in that realm, in the day-to-day, who shows up there, like the connections that are built, the trust that's there, the field of love and vulnerability that's there has been so beautiful to watch. We just, can I share the Nick story? Mm-hmm. So a young man just got back from 4 days out on the land by himself, not eating. So did a fast for 4 days. He did something that's been done before, but the way it happened in our community reflected I think growth. It showed us where we were at as a group, in that he called and said, I'm doing this thing, I would really like to tell you about it and get some feedback. And this group just emerged, people, some of whom we knew, some of whom we don't, and got to hear why he was going out and then reflect back for him. And, you know, he gave us all bracelets, which I'm currently wearing. He got back yesterday and is in the integration process. And we've done that before, and what happened this time was effortless. Like, there was a certain level of fluidity and competency, and like, oh yeah, we do this. This is who we are. This is an important transition in this young man's life, to ask big questions about who am I, what are my gifts that I have to give to this world, and what are the things that are ready to shed and leave behind, and be witnessed in that as a community. And I just feel so kind of proud of our community for knowing how to do that, and that it happened with such fluidity and ease. And it also like connected me in a way to those people, again, some of whom I didn't know that well. And now I'm just like, oh, we're all together in this thing. And it's just been amazing to watch. It's like these ideas that we've played with for so long in our work, and some of them had taken root in ways, and others are still gaining traction. And it's so amazing to watch them work on me as a person, a real life test subject getting affected in really profound ways while we're putting these ideas into action. I just feel so excited by the work. And again, what you all are doing here, to learn from that. It has a real place to land in me, and I hope that our stories have a place to land here. It feels like a real beautiful exchange.
One other thing that I want to say before we go to a question period, is that this touches on the question that you asked around how do we work with grief in the community. I spoke to it already, and we spoke to it already as well. But I mentioned that it's important to honor different transitions around the life wheel. So if you can picture that with me, that there's a wheel of life that we have, and there's birth in the east, and then there's childhood in the south, and adulthood in the west, and elderhood towards the north. And that, depending on your orientation, changes slightly, and it's basically just a circle of life. And a lot of attention and energy can be given to those moments. the birth moment and the moment of adolescence and the moment of becoming an adult and the moment of becoming an elder. And there's, depending on your cultural framework, there's different ways of celebrating those transitions. And part of the interesting task that I think the Western culture has right now is remembering what those are in our ancestry, and also how they make sense in these current times. And being careful not to reinvent the wheel, to really learn from, build upon the generations before, even if we feel like it might not have been just as we wanted. What's the wisdom in there? Why are those practices there in the first place? And then build on that so that we're growing generationally. But can you picture that wheel with me, the circle? So in between the circle are it's a line that connects those dots. And it's those connection points, the spaces in between, that are so essential and can be missed and forgotten. If we're just celebrating the birth and then the puberty rites and then, on and on around the wheel, that is really beautiful, and that's going to have a profound effect. And it goes a lot deeper and is more real if we're also working with celebrating all of the moments in between in the best way that we can. And what is it to do that? And that can be simple. That can just be a look in the eye and say, I heard you just got back, welcome home. Done. I heard you just got a new job. Yeah, good on you, Sean Berry. Hey, I heard that it really meant something to the people that you called the fire. Thanks for doing that. And no pressure to have to do it every time. You did a good service. It's in the community now, yeah? So may we not put all the pressure on the young ones to then to have to remember every time. May we carry the burden collectively. And thank you for remembering this time when it was really needed. Yeah. So many moments like that. You know what some of my favorites are? When I'm walking down the street and someone falls and doesn't get hurt and looks around like, did anyone see that? I love catching those moments with people, just to be like, I saw that. There's such a connection moment, and also there's just a way in which it can shake off and become really funny, like we can laugh at ourselves. So I often walk around looking like, yeah, what just happened?
Yeah, something struck me there. I just wanted to say, because if you think about the transitions, I don't even know if transition is the right word. I think it's the noticing is what I'm kind of hearing it as a noticing of how that person just had a little culmination, a little. So I think these little magical things happen to people all the time, and they're often the expression of a lot of hard work or a lot of internal struggles that they've sort of worked their way through, and all of a sudden this little epiphany happens, and there's not anybody there to catch that. And I'm sensing that if we're paying really careful attention, we're going to be in the right place at the right time to notice it, and sometimes that's just that moment of reflecting back, I see that, I saw that. I saw the way you did that. Mm-hmm. Right? I saw how you've come here to here. And it feels to me like that's a kind of closure, it's a kind of encapsulating, and it allows the person then to take that as like a step to the next thing. And it's almost as if it's an ongoing, it becomes fluid. Like, in jazz we used to always say, well, there's these quarter notes. And if you really, really spend a lot of time with a metronome for years, all of a sudden it becomes a line. And it's just fluid, but you're still in the tension of it, right? So I was thinking, the story that came to my mind was Sean started a social media page where he was in a personal ritual of making a friction fire coal in the morning, and he would spin this coal and he would post a picture of it. And I saw that happening, and I thought, that'd be cool. My students would like to see that. So I invited Sean to come in, and we showed a bunch of pictures of his coals, and then he talked just about his relationship to the wood, his relationship to himself. And it was really simple and really deep, right? So a couple of the kids in the community was no reason. They just started showing up early in the morning, and we got, adults around. There were fire extinguishers because, we're in chaparral. And they would make a coal every morning, every single morning, and take a picture of it. And they began to develop other little rituals around it, but little prayers and things, really cool to watch. And then along comes this tragedy, and along comes the need for sacred fire, and then along comes the invitation to Benjamin to light it. And Benjamin's very competent, and he can make a coal so easily. But when it came to the moment of the sacred fire, he's going to light a sacred fire. And I know how, from later, I didn't know from watching you, I didn't know how much anxiety you felt and how hard it was. And Del Mar really mentored you. And anyway, so you did a beautiful job, lit it without any trouble. But then you turned around and you said to whoever it was, or later, you said, God, I realize I was coming to school every day early for the last year to make a coal. I was getting ready for this. And it was like to be able to go, that's right. Thank you for sharing that truth. It's like to be able to catch that, and to know that's magic, right? That's kind of that's how life so often unfolds, is these little epiphanies that someone's got to hear that actually happened. And then you can step on that, and that can become part of your ground, to walk on. So thanks for that story. But it is this series of just noticing, and that's what we always talk about as teachers. I taught first grade. You'd be talking about something, and a little first grader would go, and you'd call them, and they'd start telling you about their uncle's vacuum cleaner. And I had a mentor who said, stay with them, because they're going to thread it back into the thing you're talking about. It might take 3 minutes. And so I realized I got all the time in the world. And I would stay there and listen to this first grader, and it'd be like this fantastic story about a vacuum cleaner that ended up with his aunt, and his aunt came over, and she brought this bowl of fruit, and they counted the fruit, and he did math. I was like, oh. That's so cool.
Yeah.
But it's like so many teachers are like, I can't talk to you right now. It's like, and shut down. And you eventually, realize your stories don't matter to anybody. And that's definitely not true. So.
Cheers. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that I, red flag just to put out there is that it can be sometimes a lot more fun or even easier or as a first step to look for those moments outward, like in others, and forget to look for them, in the self. And also it can be really easy to I really see you. And then if you say that back to me, can I let that in? So I just want to put that out as a red flag moment and an encouragement to practice on the self too. And I heard that in the story, the realization of, oh, this is why I came to school every day. It was that, and the fire heard it, so it witnessed it. I heard that you witnessed it, the fire witnessed it, and whoever you turned around to say it to witnessed it. And that then the story was shared again. And it was just shared again, So it's witnessed. And another practice that we do in our community around really acknowledging people, and we learned this from our Uncle Paul Rayfield, to do our best to acknowledge people anonymously, so that it really is about the person that's getting acknowledged rather than about the acknowledger who might be doing it to be like, see, I'm a really good witnesser. I see people. I see the good in people, And that's not always true, it's also good to stand up and look someone in the eye and really acknowledge them face to face. And, you can oftentimes feel the difference of where it's coming from. So we've gotten into a good community practice of having people write down their honorings and then passing them around, and anybody can read them. And then it doesn't matter who wrote it. It really is about the person who's being acknowledged. And that goes a long way. Yeah.
And in terms that piece around our stories and catching our stories and being careful to not look outwards and try and catch other people's stories, remembering that our stories are really important. There's actually a seasonal festival that we hold in our community that's directly in response to making sure that we do that well. And that's a wintertime festival where we look back at our life and notice all of these amazing stories of connection. And in terms of honoring the transitions, there's personal transitions of our lives, and then there's community transitions and seasonal transitions. And as an act of peacemaking, it's part of our commitment to making peace in our lives and on earth, is a series of seasonal festivals that are simply designed to bring us together to celebrate good, to just like acknowledge that the acorns falling off of these oak trees are freaking amazing and abundant and delicious, it turns out, if you know how to do it right. And let's come together and say thank you, and have a party and eat good food together and sing songs and make fires and all that fun stuff, rather than well, I won't get into the rather than. Let's just do that as an honoring of the transition that we're in as a group. Like, the seasons are changing, isn't it great? And each season has a different theme. And the wintertime one, again, is to look inward and make sure that we're remembering the places of why our life is amazing and where are the challenges, and work with that too. And then it goes around the wheel with the seasons. Yeah.
Here. Ritual for bringing about more connection with people that's active. Right now we've been doing a lot of incredible, beautiful dialogue and everything, and it's wonderful. Thank you. And I believe Manzanita is all about bringing everything to life, and life is all about bringing things to life. How can we bring this into an action that will help bonding here, opening here, a way that allows that kind of a transition to happen? Just a quick one, or it might be a long one.
Like tangible example? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Something that either we can do this right now, as to be able to make it a bonding moment where everybody gets this full experience into their bodies and takes it home more easily, and also we can replicate somewhere else. And I think this is a key of community when we come together, and you're quote the northern community, but we're actually just community.
And Kurt, maybe tell them where you work.
I teach in Van Nuys Middle School. It's a barrio school. I've been a teacher for 47 years, and that's why I'm here, because I love life and what he does especially, and everybody else here does. This is Topanga.
Thanks, Kurt.
I feel a little bit compelled to speak on this one. There's a community in South Central called Youth Mentoring Connection. And they've got something very simple that for some reason just now feels like the right time to share. My understanding is it's from Swahili, and the word is Sobono, which means I see you. And the response being, Yabo Sabono, I see you seeing me. Yeah, excuse my accent. Thank you. But seeing that work in that community in South Central is incredible. And these kids turn up on a Friday night and come for that. It is incredibly powerful and very simple. But it's,
So is it the two people, I mean, everybody gets into groups of two and you do this particular practice?
It's basically whenever they see each other. Whenever you're seeing, like whenever you're coming together and you're seeing whoever for the first time that evening, it's like just that moment of true acknowledgement. Like just taking that, it's instantaneous, but it's actually that true connection, as opposed to, oh yeah, hi, or more like hi. It's hard to put into words, but you feel it, and yeah. Someone else can probably say it better. Yeah. Yeah. And then the response being, which means I see you seeing me. And the power in that is amazing.
Yeah, that reminds me of I instituted a little practice where if anyone said thank you, I had to say you're welcome. Because it's really interesting to watch how many times someone would say thank you and I'd say thank you. And I notice it in others too. And it was just like, you could almost deflect it right back. But what it is, thank you, you're welcome. Or I see you seeing me. Just reminded me of that. Yeah. And, then we each have to find our own way. There isn't a formula, really, other than what's needed to just allow this moment to be witnessed in the best way that it can. And maybe I have it and maybe I don't.
I just, this question to me is the question to walk with here, with this community. The work that you're doing, that's a guiding question, or could be. It's definitely a guiding question for us. What are the practices? And there's many, the answer to that is huge. And what are the ones that are appropriate here, that feel authentic, that feel like they're who we are? This is true for us. Maybe it's something like that. And let's broaden. Let's see what else it might be. But I do love that the greeting custom came in, because we actually do spend a lot of time focusing on what is our greeting custom, because it goes a long way. The practice of taking a moment to actually acknowledge another human is not necessarily common. And I love that you talked about the people on the trail, because there's something funny that happens, at least in my life historically in the city. I ignore people walking down the street, but as soon as I cross across a park line, I'm like, hey, how you doing? Talking to everybody. You're like, what is that in me that makes me okay with that? I don't know. But on that particular trail, it wasn't just, hi, you're passing each other. It was like, stop, which struck me. We stopped. Almost every single person that we met on the trail, and the look was like this. Can you, I know. Have a beautiful day. Like, how many times did that happen? Yeah. Many times on the trail. It was so beautiful out there. So bringing, the greeting custom, what is the beauty we see? And taking a moment to acknowledge it in each other. And how far that goes, just, whew. It's a powerful thing. Back to the greeting custom for the babies. What is our greeting custom in every moment? Especially to the start of a gathering. We focus a lot on that.
I think there was just an exclamation point I wanted to put on the greeting piece, because it came out a bunch of times. And I don't know if there's a simple answer, but I try to remember, I don't do it all the time, but if I walk into a space and there's people there, and I'm not in a beeline hurry, I just try to make it a practice to say hi to everybody, like I do when I come in to see the kids, and I only do it intentionally because it was sort of taught to me that we don't do that. We don't acknowledge and greet and welcome. And there was one of my mentors, a guy Michael Mead, had a bunch of men from Africa who'd come out. They were refugees, and they were doing some work with him, and he was getting a drum group together. And these very, very tall men. They were like 6'4", all of them. There's like 8 of them, and they were walking down the street in downtown Seattle, I think they were, and they kept grabbing each other and kind of putting their heads together and making this exchange of words. They do it every 10 or 15 minutes, and then they'd laugh and hug each other. And he thought it was so odd, and he asked them, like, what is that? And one of them goes, oh, we're just welcoming each other. And he goes, oh, that's really cool. You guys do that a lot. They go, well, not normally, but we just keep encountering people who won't look at us, and so we don't feel welcome. So we keep reminding each other that we're welcome here on this earth together, So we're just doing our welcoming to each other every 10, 15 minutes. And it was like totally natural for them. And so I think the extreme, that's sort of the other end of it, where it's if you're really used to being welcomed all the time, you notice it, and then when you start doing it, maybe it. So I don't know, like in the Waldorf schools, we'd stand at the door and shake every kid's hand and look them in the eye. And when they leave class, we do the same thing. Shake their hand and look them in the eye. That was kind of part of the, and of course the one we all know is walking into the sushi restaurant and the chefs yell something at you in Japanese, but you feel welcome. And you're like, they
they know me here, you know? And you know they don't, but it still feels so good to have people recognize you and welcome you. So I think welcoming might be kind of the exclamation point I didn't want to miss. The possibility that if we just take welcoming a little more seriously, walking out of here, maybe that'll make, you know, a little rip. I don't know, Kurt, that's just...
Well,
I'd like
and
to add one little point there. Oftentimes when we do greet people or something and we say, how you doing? When we pay attention to them and we hear, okay, or good, we know it's not just that. So I have a tendency to be able to ask, is that all? And say, no, great, or fantastic, or it's different. And all it was me paying attention to hearing that person or feeling that person. And that's where the connection is that feeling. And if we don't express it, I don't need to say thank you. One of the Human, I don't know if you've seen that movie, they got an abo in there that has this incredible beard. And abos don't have thank you or please in their language. They don't need it. Why? Because you're expected to be pure, great yourself and giving all the time. What do you give yourself? So oftentimes, like you said about this, going into a room, and if I'm not beelining something, then I can actually be present with you and I can hear what you really said. But that one question changes the whole demeanor in a kid or an adult.
let's take one more, and then we'll wrap it.
What I got present to in that is that in my community, my family, my wife, extended family, we say, when we notice that somebody's not with us, and people just say, "How are you doing?" "Oh, okay," but like you can tell that they're not necessarily present with you. We, a thing that we do is say, "What are you present to?" And you'll be surprised that sometimes it's like a ton of things that have nothing to do with you, and it's giving them the opportunity to actually express it just frees them up so they can be with you. And it's a practice that we inherited from our parents, that we bring into our family, that hopefully we bring to our kids, and it's effortless, like you guys were saying.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, and welcome means something different to probably all of us in this room. Like, what makes me feel welcome may be different than what makes someone else in this room feel welcome. And so, again, I feel like I'm like the red flag meter around here, but just to make sure that there isn't then a generalization of what welcoming should be in each moment, because it's different. It's person-specific, it's moment-specific, it's context-specific. And there's an art to then listening for, what's true right now, to allow for authentic connection. I know I'm from New Jersey, and it's totally okay when someone surprises you at home to open the door and be like, "What the heck are you doing here?" Like, that means I am so excited to see you. And I have
a little less PG.
I have learned, yeah, well, we're in a PG moment, but I have learned that it doesn't mean that around in California, and that can be a misinterpreted moment. So just to, pay attention to the moment-specific, person-specific, context-specific. Yeah, exactly. I've learned that the hard way. Did I say that to you when you came in? That's hysterical. Yeah, that meant I'm so excited and that you came here. I'm so glad I told that story. That could have been a chink in our love. No, but yeah, so that's important. And I want to go back to the story that you told a little bit ago about the man that we just sent off, the young man that we just sent off to go do a solo in the wilderness, who he was held in a community context as he was sent, and then as he's out there, and then he'll be received back well. But one thing that another pitfall that I've seen is, this worked in that moment, so let's do it again here. Let's just repeat it exactly. Rather than listening for what actually is needed in this moment. And what I loved about the send-off that we did was I watched the whole community circle that was there listening at that level. There was a collective communal listening for what's needed. And it doesn't have to be me that has it, or yeah, I felt that around the circle, that sentiment of it doesn't need to be me, which allows for the circle to hold it. Yeah? So, you know, at one of our weekend gatherings, it was a bird language course, someone started, his job was to get people to do the dishes, and so people weren't showing up for their dish duty, and so he started saying, "Red-tailed hawks, assemble!" And he was screaming that at the top of his lungs, and it became this thing that actually did work really well at that time. And it was also making everybody laugh. And then the next year, someone else was tasked with the work trade position to do that, and people weren't showing up for their shift, and then they started to do that. You know, whoever the group was, "Red-tailed hawks, assemble!" And all of a sudden, that became the story that, oh, that's what they do at bird language. When you need the dish crew to come, that's what you say. And we were just like, wow, that is so fascinating to watch. How quickly something can become the norm just because it was witnessed one time. And how that can then take the personal authority of listening for what serves in each moment truly away from ourselves. And how quickly that can lead to, or be sourcing from a fear of, do I belong or not? So encouragement to really deeply listen for what serves in the moment. This worked then. What were the elements that were in there, and how can I apply them in this moment? And maybe it works, maybe it's the exact same thing, and maybe it's slightly different, but it's fully relational. And that is the task at hand, is to remember that we are relational beings, and that our actions need to be in a relational way, and that's got to source from a relational way of thinking. And so that's what we've dedicated our work to, is how do we, again, source from a relational way of thinking. And that's a practice, just like breathing. And our bodies have a lot to teach us there, because they do it well. So may each of us do that well, continued and with grace. Yeah.
Well, I noticed it's 9:15, and for whatever that means, clock, but it does also mean that you're wrapping up our speaker series event tonight, and of course some of us will be here for a little while and cleaning up, so there's always opportunities to talk and connect and relate, and also maybe speak with Lauren and Dave a little more if you need to or would like to or want to. But I really want to just take the moment to thank you guys for jumping in here right after driving down and coming and joining our community and bringing a lot for us to think about and chew on and also begin to live with. I think the anonymous box is going to definitely join our community. I love that. That's really awesome. And so anyway, thank you, Lauren and Dave, and I'm really grateful to have you guys here. So looking forward to it. I want to just ask, before we go, if any other of our, I want to call them our, not our youth, maybe it's our youth, our high school students. Did anybody have anything that they just wanted to say that was coming up for you that you didn't really have a chance to share? Because there was quite a few of us grabbing the mic. Benjamin.
Well, I was just relating to what Dr. Paul was saying about epiphanies. And ever since I went to the bird language course a month ago or so, pretty much every day I have epiphanies with birds. You know, I'll see a bird, I'll hear something, I'll notice something, and I'll look in my book or whatever, and I'll kind of ponder the ideas, and then sometimes it just clicks. I'm like, wait, that bird did that because of that. And I saw that bird, and it all kind of fits, and I have those epiphanies every day, and it's so like satisfying, but also like kind of honoring, like, wow, I got to experience that. So I wanted to share that. So thank you guys.
Well, when you were talking about the sacred fire, I was just thinking about the differences each sacred fire had, and the sacred fire really, I think, reflected the life and the death of the people or the person that we were honoring. So I was just thinking about that when you were asking the question about the sacred fires. So, yeah.
I was just so grateful to bring life to like the sacred fire, to create it and to kind of create this space so that people could do that. And so it was just an incredible experience for me to be able to do that, and I'm going to carry it for the rest of my life.
Anybody in the back row? You guys okay?
Well, I just thought that the sacred fire was really amazing because it was an honoring of both the male and the female, and that's something that today's society doesn't really have, and of like what they bring to the table, and a perfect harmony of both of them together, which is really, really amazing to see and participate in.
What I also found beautiful at Sacred Fire was how music just flowed naturally from everyone. Like you could step into the space of the Sacred Fire and then be called by an instrument, and suddenly it wasn't like you were picking up the instrument, but the instrument was becoming one with you, and the music was flowing through you and being created through you. And it kind of felt like I was able to connect through my ancestors that way. And I thought that was really beautiful, just being able to have that space to freely express music and feel as if my ancestors were singing along with me.
Bird language was the bomb.
So in case you didn't know, Benjamin and Ruby Grace and Ruby Grace's mom and her brother went to an intensive bird language class or workshop for a week up in Santa Cruz that was led by Lauren and Dave and some other people. So they came back, and I just want to get confirmation. Sean and Delmar, don't you feel like they brought back, like all of us are so awake to the birds right now? And of course it's spring, but I feel like there's something that Benjamin and Jennifer and them and Ruby Grace brought back, and Noah, that it just felt like there was a vibration that just came into the community, and like we're all like spending our lunchtime going, no, I think it's a brown-hooded cowbird. No, I'm and like we're just like in this deep, like ponderous like space with the birds. At least for me, it's a totally new level of I can't do much when I'm outside anymore. It's like I'm talking to this parent, I'm like, or it's like during the middle of Story of the Day this morning, who was sharing, I'm like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but right there. Yeah, you were talking about the nestlings. Yeah, Julianne?
Oh, I was just saying, Madeline kind of brought that home to me, and now I'm at home all day going, oh, I haven't heard the robin be here before, and then I got the app that you guys have.
Well, it was kind of like a tipping point moment where we've all been listening to birds for a year and a half, a lot, and then all of a sudden somebody came in like with an obsessive energy about it, and we all just kind of went, oh yeah, I'm there, I'm totally there.
I love that.
Really cool thing to experience. I wanted to say ancestors because you said it, Grace. The Sacred Fire was 4 days, 3 times, so 12 days of this idea that there's ancestors here among us in the fire and that have passed, and that became so central to our conversation that when we had a visitor a week ago who talks about ancestors a lot, she grew up in a Dene reservation, and it was just like we totally felt like that was our language too, and it was so resonant to be able to have that now, not just a idea that we have ancestors, where I've got all these pictures on my wall at home, and I really feel that, and I think that came out of the fire for me, and I'm really grateful for that. That's a big shift in my life to have that. I think maybe that hit some people here too, that that's a big part of our loss of ancestors. That's a big piece of what we, not all of us, but many of us that have grown up in this world today have lost that as a tradition in our culture of recognition. Yeah, Grace.
I just wanted to.
I'm going to give this to you because who knows, someday your children might say, "That's my mom."
I also, it's again about sacred fire. Before I came to Manzanita, I had a big loss of one of my best friends passed away in a car accident. And I didn't really find myself in like a grieving space after that. It was kind of crying and then being like, I should move on. I should be fine. I should just keep walking or keep drawing and singing and just keep going forward. And I didn't have like a space where I felt like I could be held. And then we had the first sacred fire, and it was as if she was there again. And I felt like I could be there and talk to her without having to have a direct physical connection as to talk to her with. And it was incredible because every sacred fire I've always felt her being there again, and it feels really good to be able to have that space with her again.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think a circle would be good.
I want to add one thing. Oh.
Just, I've been kind of toying with this idea of, you know, we talk about I'm sorry for your loss, but what I've witnessed or been witness to in creating this kind of community, having this kind of ritual and this deep connection, that it really no longer is about loss. It really is about transition. You know, and it's about witnessing transition. And it's about living with death and walking with death and living with loss and walking with loss. And loss no longer has the potency for me that it did in the past as something to mourn over. You know, it is something to witness and experience, and it has delivered to us this ability to include it. Mm-hmm. And when you include it, it's much like Tim had said in the beginning, there is a miraculous sense of beingness when you are actually witness to this kind of transitioning. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say one other thing, and this is, I've thought of this a few times as the questions came, and so it's here again. But one thing that I love about the time at the fire is that there's oftentimes someone in deep grief, and then right across the fire there may be someone laughing so hard or singing so loud, and then it all can exist in a space, a small space like that at the same time, I think is a really good teaching. Because there can be this moment of, oh, someone just went into, you know, a cathartic cry. What's needed? Is it that we all need to stop in that moment and really be with that person? Maybe. Is it that maybe one person needs to be with that person and other people can just keep doing what they're doing? What would it be if, you know, expressing emotion like that or crying is just as normal as a burst of laughter that comes, you know? Sometimes laughter pauses the whole room and people join in and want to hear the joke and the story, right? And sometimes it just pops in and it's totally normal. And oftentimes it's different when it's tears or pain or grief as opposed to a joy spectrum emotion. So I just wanted to put that in the circle to remember that it all is happening all the time anyway. It's in this room in various ways anyway. So it's existing all together, and may we allow it to exist, you know, as well as we can. Yeah. You had your hand up.
I just had this insight that I wanted to share. It was the grief fire. Because I really relate to what Grace said about it's such a great window that exists to have the ancestors come back. I have my mom, and she comes every time, and you know, it's just like, oh, great, she's here, you know, like palpably here. And then in the beginning of our talk, I was thinking about all these amazing connections in our community that have been fostered by these fires. And they're not just any old connection. I mean, yes, we already have a connection, but around the fires, there's a forging of a more strong, deep connection that is like a vibrating chord. Because I've had it with some key members of the community, and I see it with other people having other connections. And then with the teens, it's been super beneficial to all of us because we all got so ignited by that, you know. And but I just had this thought that that's one of the ways the ancestors participate with us, that it's their gift that they give when we're in connection in that way, that they keep giving to us again. So it's a back and forth and a gift. So I just saw that.
I just wanted to share briefly a moment that I had where I had the realization that I get to be an ancestor. I'd never felt like, wow, like maybe there'll be a sacred fire for me. And so, you know, like what flowers will I want, you know? And it was just, it was a really sweet, different way to see my life.
So I like the idea of a song. Did you have one in mind? I have a gift song that I thought I would share, but we could do multiples if you'd like.
There was also 2 teens here who wrote a song. That was sacred. Bring their song or not.
We're both saying no.
We'll do one. Maybe that'll get the spirits going. Yeah, maybe everyone stand up. Yeah. And this is a song that it's a gratitude song, but it's also a belonging song, and it's become the way we have welcomed some children into the community. So I was hoping to kind of honor you two, maybe up here. Yeah. 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 Come up over here.
This is what happens.
That's what I thought. We'd continue this. Yeah.
This is how we induce life.
Yeah.
Please, go ahead. That's what I'm working on.
So yeah, it's a very simple song, and it's about what you're grateful for to do with someone, and it really makes you kind of feel like you belong. And that's, I think, what we want to tell this new baby coming, that we're grateful for them to be here and to belong. And so it goes. Usually I have a guitar, so I'm a little scared.
Can I add one thing to that? Yes. That just also the huge transition it is to become a dad and become a mom. Yeah. And sometimes the baby gets all the attention. Yeah. So just remember that this is a big moment for these two. And oh, there's so much in there. So may you two be really held to and know that you belong as a mom and you belong as a dad just as much as this little one belongs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have to say congrats. So it goes like this. It goes, I am so grateful to have you in my life.
I am so grateful to have you in my life.
I want to be with you.
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 All the time.
All the time.
On the rolling meadows.
On the rolling meadows.
On the mountain tops.
On the mountain tops.
And then we could just add different things. So maybe I want to cry with you. I am so grateful to have you in my life. I want to cry with you. Cry with you all the time. On the rolling meadows. On the mountain tops. All right,
want to dance with
with you. So grateful to have you in my life. I want to dance with you. Dance with you all the time. On the rolling meadows. on the mountain tops. Sing with you. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. I want to sing with you all the time. On the rolling meadows, on the mountain tops.
Play.
I'm so grateful to have you in my life. I want to play with you all the time. On the rolling meadows, on the mountain tops. Woo!
So for those of you that don't know, Roberto lives in San Luis Obispo, and he shows up sometimes. Like in the middle of the night at the Sacred Fire, there's like a guy coming out of the rain with a guitar and a ponytail and songs. It's like it really happened just like that. Am I right? You guys were there?
We wrote that song.
Yeah.
We sang that song at the last. And Roberto wrote the song that we sang. Yes.
We all read it. Grace knows. Yeah.
Do we end with that?
You want to end with it?
Let's do it.
I think that was the closing. Oh, you didn't do another one? Is that what you just said? I might have missed it. I feel like.
She is dancing barefoot in the mud
By the sacred fire, he is dancing with respect. Then guard the fire. Rain is falling on my back. Music's getting louder. Smoke is rising from Big Rock again. It's getting louder. Let us join louder.
Praise. Praise. Sometimes it's grief. Come on. That's the beauty of business. Thank you guys all for being here.
Yeah.